Okay, John, it's time to do some talking again.
Oh boy.
Killing Time Resurrected. Nightdive Studios are back. You've played this. You're quite
Yes.
excited about it.
Yes. I wanted to do a full video on it actually, but other things came up instead, so we're talking about it here. Killing Time is an extremely interesting game, and I'm very happy to see Nightdive tackle this. Like between this and stuff like PO'd, it's neat to see them digging into the lesser known stuff in the history of first person shooters. Killing Time actually started life on the 3DO as a the idea is that it's sort of it's a more open-ended shooter, and it tells the story using sort of these like in-world FMV sequences, almost like ghosts, similar to the Seventh Guest actually. But you're going through shooting enemies and getting through these mazes. But in 1995, it was also released on the PC, but the PC version was completely different. It was actually a better game, I would say. The level design was much more complex, and the engine seemed a lot more capable. Plus, it ran better. It ran very slowly on 3DO. I would say the difference between them is that the 3DO game feels like an extension of Wolfenstein 3D with a lot of very boxy, simple environments. It can do angled walls and it can do stairs, but it's overall very, very simple in terms of layout, whereas the PC game is more in line with something like the Doom engine, but I would say even beyond that, it can do like proper rooms above rooms, and it's inching towards like what the build engine could do. What Nightdive's done is they've essentially created a fusion of the two, because the complaint with the PC game was always that they replaced all the cool FMV based sprites and realistic stuff and the weapons and everything with these like new, more cartoony looking assets that were also very, very low res, like way lower res than the 3DO version. So they've essentially transplanted 3DO assets into this PC version of the game that has been reworked for the consoles. Um, but although in Nightdive fashion, they also allow you to toggle on the old PC sprites if you prefer, which is cool. But the idea here is that you're essentially exploring almost like a giant open island that's somewhat non-linear in design. Like you start on this boat, you're walking around the docks, but you eventually make your way up into like this giant mansion like garden area. You can go all out in the back in the forest, and there's like the hunter shacks out there, and it's all like huge, spread out and seamless. So you're exploring this gigantic island, piecing together story through these FMV bits that occur along the way, dealing with enemies, and it's like it's Doom-like at its core in terms of how it plays, but there's more story there. Like for instance, to get into the mansion at the beginning, you actually have to find like uh, a guest pass, like to get into this supposedly exclusive party, even though it's all run by ghosts now, but there's like a force that keeps you out otherwise. So instead of just getting like generic key, you are getting objects that then further the story, and you start to see more like sort of these like weird flashbacks, ghost like sequences of what happened there. So it's an attempt at storytelling within a large open environment that we've really not, that was really pretty still fresh in 1995. It was a very unique game for the time. I'm a little disappointed that they didn't include the 3DO game as well as sort of an optional bonus thing, but I'm still happy that they kind of combined the two. And of course, being Nightdive, it runs like a dream on every platform. If you're on the at either Xbox Series consoles or PlayStation 5, you get 120 frames per second gameplay, fully adjustable FOV, various other graphical options, texture filtering on and off, that you can pop in the old style sprites, you can tweak the gameplay to be more like the originals. There's various other enhancements and quality of life things that you can play with. They redid so many of the assets at a much higher resolution, including like world textures and stuff. So it's very, very sharp and clean looking now. So it really feels like this like ultimate take on what Killing Time was trying to be, but done through this like modern lens, with all the expected improvements. And it's another example of Nightdive just doing what they do better than basically anyone. They're able
Right.
to remaster these games, bring them back, fuse the best parts of them together into a cohesive whole, and do so without anything feeling out of place. Like it still feels like a proper 1995 game, just enhanced. And it's awesome. So I really cannot recommend this high enough. If you're looking for sort of a unique shooter from that period that's kind of unlike other things at the time, especially atmosphere wise. It really leverages the digital audio capabilities of what the 3DO and then the PC could do, like the music and sound effects, for instance. So it's all much more like CD audio, but very creepy, dark, ambient stuff. Although the game does get a little bit goofy with like killer chefs and like weird clowns that try to strangle you, and it definitely goes places, but I do think it is absolutely worth checking out.
I just don't quite understand, but I do love it, the fact that Nightdive are able to make a viable business model from resurrecting, as it were, these
know,
really
right?
old and somewhat obscure games.
I agree. And that's, I don't know how they make it work. I assume that they've got a team that they know the budgets that it takes to make this stuff happen. And these guys are really into this stuff, and they're able to just somehow get it done. And
The other thing, of course, is the Kex engine. They seem to be able to take pretty much any older game, preserve the gameplay mechanics within their new engine. The logistics of that completely, I've just got no idea how they do it.
I agree. It's an amazing asset for them. And, you know, Sam and all those guys over there, they're top talent, super smart programmers that really get these games, right? And they understand what makes these games special and what makes them feel a certain way. So it really feels like it comes from a place of like genuine care, as opposed to just like, we're just making this product to make money. And I'm all over that. So again, this is awesome. And now that they're delving into weird stuff like this, I wouldn't be surprised to see stuff like freaking ZPC, zero population count. Come on, guys, make it happen. We need some ZPC action here brought back. I assume you guys have no idea what that is.
No.
Okay. It was a game that ran on Bungie's Marathon 2 engine, and it used, I want to say, like very cartoon style graphics, but it was like kind of this weird edgy thing that was for Mac and PC, released in late '96. And I remember playing it and thinking there was nothing else that looked like this game, but it's so weird and such a deep cut that it feels almost natural at this point that Nightdive's going to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Any thoughts, Oliver?
Wow. I mean, the one thing that's really weird is like that integration of FMV into the world.
Right.
Like that's kind of intense. That's something I admit I've not seen before in a game. It's very of the era, I would say, but certainly interesting relative to other titles that I think were using FMV in more conservative circumstances. But yeah, I mean, this looks very compelling. Like PO'd, it's a game that I would have never had any reason to look at outside of these remasters. But it is, it's a title that I'm glad they're taking a look at. And like you said, John, I don't know, the commercial interest in titles like these, I would be interested to see how much interest there is, because these Nightdive remasters seem to be targeting titles that are extremely obscure.
Niche. So but they're doing it, man. They're doing it.
They're doing it, yeah. There's no doubt about that.
Nightdive has essentially built the reputation now where if they make this thing, they've got an audience of committed gamers that want to play it simply because it's a Nightdive joint. I think that's pretty fantastic. I was just looking at the Destructoid review here, John, and they're talking about how the sprites were enhanced because they were able to get access to the original photographs of the actors.
Right, exactly. So not only did they bring over the FMV style sprites of the 3DO game, but they had the original stuff to work with. So they're able, like when you actually see them in the game, the resolution of these sprites is way, 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 way higher than it originally was back in the day. So like this kind of ties in with what I was talking about earlier with that Mouse PI game, where they're essentially leveraging very high resolution sprites to great effect. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. It's super, super cool. Yeah, the remastering work that went into this is significant. They did not it's not just a case of upscaling things. Like there was clearly a lot of work put into preserving the way this game looks, but doing it all at a much higher fidelity. And it's just awesome.